The Zarnak were built for war. Towering 8 feet tall, with 6 muscular arms and hardened, chitin-plated skin, they were a species bred by evolution to dominate battlefields. Their victories were etched into galactic history, their pride untouched. Among them stood Commander Threx, a decorated warrior whose record was unblemished until a human, of all things, challenged that pride. Humans were known for curiosity, ingenuity, and technology, not combat. Threx saw them as fragile. 2 arms, soft skin, no natural armor. A bipedal species whose greatest strength was building things, not breaking them. So when the Alliance's annual interspecies combat demonstration was announced aboard the Vigilant Star, and a human volunteered to face him, he barely contained his amusement. Her name was Staff Sergeant Elena Ruiz. Average height. Average build. Quiet. She didn't posture or preen. She stepped forward calmly, offered a polite nod, and said, "I accept." Threx laughed. "You're serious? You can barely reach my chest." "You'll see," she replied, not smiling. Word spread quickly. Zarnak warriors crowded the arena, eager to watch their champion humble the human. Other species gathered too, expecting a short fight. The humans watched in silence. Some looked anxious, others oddly confident. A few shared knowing glances. They'd seen Elena in training. They knew something the others didn't. Rules were simple. No weapons. No armor. Win by knockout or surrender. Threx stomped into the circle, flexing all 6 arms. Elena entered after, tying her hair back, slipping on thin combat gloves. She nodded to the referee and stretched, movements fluid and precise. Threx cracked his knuckles, glaring down at her. "You can still back out, human. No shame in knowing your place. No shame in finding out you were wrong either," she replied. The bell rang. He charged, all 6 fists aiming to overwhelm. The air hissed with their speed. But Elena moved like water, slipping through gaps, bending at angles no Zarnak had ever considered. She ducked, pivoted, jabbed once, twice, quick strikes that seemed light but landed with surgical precision. Threx snarled. "Stop dancing and fight." Another flurry of attacks, wider this time. Elena spun inside the arc, elbowed the joint of his upper arm. He hissed, "First contact that hurt." A flicker of surprise crossed his face. The crowd murmured. A human had landed the first real blow. He adjusted, attacking with a tighter form. Elena stayed close, inside his reach. She used his size against him, redirecting force, letting his momentum carry him just off balance. Every movement she made had purpose, no wasted energy, no fear. She didn't grin. She didn't taunt. She simply fought, calm, efficient, relentless. Threx growled and backed up, blinking. A thin trail of blood trickled from his lip. Silence spread across the arena. He wiped it away, stared at the red smear on his hand, then at her. "You're different," he said. "No," Elena answered, lowering into a ready stance again. "We all fight. Just not the way you expect." The next exchange began, and already, something had shifted. The giant wasn't laughing anymore. Threx pressed forward, no longer overconfident but focused, every arm now a calculated weapon. He came in low with 2 fists and high with 4, a whirlwind of coordinated strikes. Elena didn't meet him with strength, she met him with timing. She sidestepped, letting the punches pass inches from her face, then drove her palm into a pressure point just below his lower right shoulder. A slight wince. A pause. She was mapping him. Zarnak were trained to overpower, not to adapt. Their anatomy gave them the advantage in brute force, but their technique relied on dominance. 6 arms allowed for constant attack and defense simultaneously, but only if the opponent played by the same rules. Elena didn't. She watched his stance, measured his balance, and waited. Each time he swung, she responded with something unconventional. A foot planted on his thigh to vault over a strike, a twist that brought her inside his elbow arc, a jab to his side that made his knee dip. Not hard hits, targeted ones. Zarnak physiology favored resilience. Their muscles could absorb trauma, but their joints, ligaments, and nerve clusters were vulnerable if you knew where to look. Elena knew. Years of studying alien combat tactics, anatomy charts, and simulation drills made sure of it. Threx's breathing changed. Shorter now. Frustrated. He tried to grapple, using all arms to corner her. She bent low, swept his legs, and slammed a fist behind his kneecap. He stumbled. Not a knockdown, but close. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Elena kept moving. She didn't chase him. She let him reset. Let him realize he was losing ground. "Why do you hesitate?" he barked, chest heaving. "You could strike." "That's not the point," she said calmly. Humans had evolved to endure. They hunted by persistence, not speed. They chased prey for hours until it collapsed. They fought in cities, deserts, space, unpredictable terrain where chaos was the norm. Their strength wasn't in muscle, it was in the ability to think while bleeding. Threx roared, fists flying again. Faster. Angrier. She ducked a swing, parried another, then landed a spinning back elbow to the center of his sternum. It wasn't enough to stop him, but it knocked the rhythm out of his assault. His upper right arm dropped slightly. She noticed. He lunged, and she let herself fall back, catching his weight with her legs, flipping him over her body with momentum alone. He landed hard, stunned. A full-body impact he didn't expect. On the ground, he scrambled up, panting. Elena stood already, breathing controlled. She wasn't untouched, bruises formed along her ribs, her knuckles were blooded, but she was steady. Zarnak fought to dominate. Humans fought to survive. One was about pride. The other was about necessity. "You think because we have fewer arms, we're weaker?" Elena asked quietly. "We've spent our whole history outsmarting things that wanted to kill us. You're just another challenge." Threx's expression shifted. Not anger now. Not even respect. It was the first spark of fear. Threx charged again, this time reckless. His pride had been bruised, and now instinct overrode training. All 6 arms moved without coordination, throwing heavy, desperate blows. Elena didn't step back, she stepped through. She ducked the wild uppercuts, slid inside the storm, and drove her shoulder into his gut. He grunted, staggered, and she capitalized. A knee to his thigh, a hook to the ribs, then a sharp palm strike to his throat, not enough to crush, just enough to choke momentum. He stumbled, coughing, eyes wide. Around them, silence deepened. The audience was no longer waiting for entertainment, they were witnessing something rare. A human dismantling a warrior bred for victory. "You still think strength wins?" she asked between breaths. Threx roared and threw all 6 arms at once. It was brute force, a wall of fury. Elena moved with a single pivot, spun outside, and caught his middle right wrist. She twisted. Something popped. A crack echoed. Threx bellowed and pulled back, arm hanging limp. He backed away, chest rising and falling, his composure shattered. Elena stood in front of him, hands at her sides, blood dripping from her lip, her stance unwavering. "You don't know what a real fight is," she said. "You've trained in arenas. We've trained in chaos." Threx bared his fangs, sweat beading under his armored skin. He tried to rally, braced his legs, and launched forward with his remaining arms, aiming to crush her outright. She didn't flinch. She waited until the last second, then slipped aside, caught his upper arm, and redirected his weight. He crashed to one knee. Before he could rise, she drove her elbow into the back of his neck, then stepped back. He didn't fall. But he stayed kneeling, dazed, breath ragged. He blinked slowly, as if trying to understand how this had happened. Elena circled him, not for show, not to gloat, but to keep her angle sharp, options open. "We adapt," she said. "Pain teaches us. Loss teaches us. That's how we survive." Threx gritted his teeth, forcing himself upright, shoulders trembling. He lifted his 4 working arms and launched himself one last time, eyes full of rage, pride, and desperation. Elena dropped low, drove her foot into the side of his knee, and caught his momentum on her back. Using his own force, she twisted and threw him flat on his back with a ground-shaking thud. He lay there, chest rising and falling, limbs sprawled. His remaining arms twitched, trying to lift him. Elena stepped forward, standing over him, offering no words. He looked up at her, his glare broken, his breath uneven. The silence from the crowd was heavy. Even the Zarnak warriors looked down, unsure. Elena extended her hand. Threx stared at it for a long second, then turned his face away. "Pride's a poor shield," she said quietly, letting her hand fall. She turned and walked toward the edge of the ring. Behind her, Threx didn't move. He had learned the hard way. Threx lay motionless, the weight of defeat heavier than his body. 6 arms couldn't lift him now. The silence was no longer shock, it was realization. The crowd had expected dominance. Instead, they witnessed dismantling, done not with brute force but with precision, patience, and something far more dangerous than strength, intent. Elena didn't look back. She didn't raise her fists or seek applause. She walked with the same calm she entered with, as if the fight had never shaken her. Her uniform clung with sweat, blood marked her gloves, but her steps were steady. It wasn't arrogance, it was focus. The fight hadn't been for pride. It had been for understanding. The medics moved toward Threx. He waved them off, slowly rising to one elbow, jaw clenched, breath shallow. Pain radiated through every limb, but worse than the pain was the awareness. She could have ended it sooner. She chose not to. She gave him every opportunity to stop, and he ignored them all. Now, the lesson was carved into his body. Later, the reports would describe the event as a turning point. For decades, humans had been seen as auxiliary, clever, resourceful, but physically unimpressive. After Elena Ruiz, that image collapsed. Zarnak warriors began enrolling in human combat courses. Joint drills were redesigned. A single demonstration had shifted interspecies dynamics. But Elena didn't seek fame. She declined interviews. She returned to duty as if nothing had changed. Those who trained with her noticed her precision, her silence, her discipline. She spoke little, but when she did, others listened. Her legend spread not because she told it, but because others couldn't stop retelling it. Commanders from various species reviewed footage of the match, slowing it down frame by frame, trying to understand how a human woman dismantled a 6-armed champion. Analysts pointed out how she used angles, how she disrupted balance, how she manipulated momentum rather than resist it. It wasn't just skill, it was doctrine. It was survival turned into strategy. One report summarized it best: humans do not win because they overpower. They win because they refuse to lose. The Zarnak High Council held a private meeting weeks later. Threx, still recovering, stood before them. When asked what happened, he spoke only one sentence. "I mistook silence for weakness." On Earth, in training fields and military academies, Elena's name became part of unofficial instruction. Not as a symbol of dominance, but as proof of something deeper. That no matter how advanced another species might seem, humans possess a capacity that defies expectation, a capacity born from struggle, adaptation, and a history of never having the upper hand. In the end, the message was clear. 2 hands, guided by discipline, shaped by history, and driven by reason, could bring down a force no one thought could fall. And Elena? She kept training. Because for humans, there is no final fight, only the next one.